Hey everybody, welcome on into the channel. Welcome to my first ever weekend broadcast and my first ever daytime broadcast. As you can see, the Florida sun is, quite bright over here. Um, yeah, it's exciting, but I'm doing this all to help talk about the KCU, Kids Comics Unite, and our first ever anthology project. A group of like 40-ish of us have been working on this project for a year, and our Kickstarter just launched last week. And we got funded within the first day, which is really exciting. Um, and yeah, I'm taking this opportunity to spotlight some of my fellow creators, some of the work we did both on comics and behind the scene. Uh, yeah, so welcome on in. If you're part of the KCU community, if you're part of the Twitch community, everybody's welcome here. Yeah, and with me, I have Bert Tzeng. Am I don't think I've ever said your last name in front of you before. Am I getting that right?
You did great. I've grown up with a number of pronunciations, so you are right there.
Okay, and we have studied a little like Mandarin in our house, and so my first instinct is to say "tsung" or something more like that, but I don't know if that's actually right either.
God, you know what's funny, Jeff, is that I recently started to go by the traditional pronunciation. So that's how I pronounce it, son.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right. That's
Time. I didn't know. That's awesome.
that's an auspicious note to start off on, I think. But it's good. So first up, Bert, if you want to give a quick introduction to yourself, I think you can probably do it much better than I can.
Know about that. As we were saying before this started, you did such an amazing job interviewing our colleague Sarah. I think this might be a new gig for you.
Well, I'm
Um,
having a lot of fun, and it
yeah.
helps having awesome guests.
Oh, right back at you. Awesome, awesome colleague. Well, long and short of it is, I say in my social media profiles, like the short clip version is, I'm a part-time creator. I'm a full-time cat dad. So have I've lived multiple lives. I've had multiple careers. And I think the theme over time is that, I've always been really interested in creating in comics in particular. It's something that's always been in my life, sometimes more in the background, sometimes not. And in the last few years, I've really stepped forward and really wanted to make it a bigger part of what I do and what I bring into the world.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. I likewise walked, different path career wise for a long time. I've only been jumping into the comics thing, so that's something I think we both really share. Um, so before we jump into anything too in depth, I thought it might be fun to check out the Kickstarter. I aside from like briefly looking to like bring it into OBS today, I haven't actually looked at the page yet today. We were doing pretty well last I saw in terms of funding, but I'm gonna hop over to that. So here we are.
And real
Uh,
well.
yeah, so our goal was $3,300 just to get the book out there, to do our print run, get it published. Uh, and as you can see, we're sitting right now at just over 5,000. That's incredible. We've actually hit a few stretch goals then. I was kind of looking what those are. And like, I won't play any of the videos and stuff. But like our stretch goals, we've now funded so all the authors get the copy, and like a big part of that was we have a lot of several contributors that are international, so making sure we can just ship it to them as a thank you for their work, because everyone on this project has contributed their work for free as well as time serving on committees. We've expanded the back matter, so there's a little more information. There's the bios. Actually, hey Bert, there you are, smiling right at us on the sample bio page. um, then now we've gotten up to the spot gloss cover and the French fold. So this book is gonna be really nice. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah.
And the next step will be the dust jacket. If we hit that 5,500, I honestly don't know where to put my expectations at this point. I think we lost Bert for a second. There we go. Yeah, I don't know where to put my expectations. At first, I was like, oh gosh, I just hope we get funded sometime during the Kickstarter. And then it's like, as we start to roll in and get these stretch goals, it's like, can we make that last stretch goal? Which for I didn't bring that one up yet. The last stretch goal is presenting a Comic-Con panel um, for this book and talking about the experience of making it collaboratively. Well, collaboratively, which is apparently a very hard word for me to say. Um, but I trust you. I assure you, it's even harder to do. Getting that many creators together to push something to fruition. But nonetheless, here we are. Um, and actually, while I've got you here, Bert, I wanted to uh, give you a little bit of a plug here because uh, you are part of the sample pages. So if people go to the Kickstarter, which I'm going to put the link there in the chat. I'm going to pin that so it's there for everybody at the top. But yeah, so if you go to our Kickstarter and scroll through, you can actually see some of Bert's work, which is right here. And it really pops. It's very clean. Here we are. Yeah. So we've got a couple of your sample pages here. Yeah, it looks so good. And for those of you who don't know, Bert and I are we're in a critique group together as well. So I had the privilege of getting to see some of his development of this work, and it's been really cool seeing it all come together.
Well, you get a lot of credit for that too, because you helped make it what it was, what's become. So yeah, thanks for the gift of your time and your attention, and especially your candor.
Oh, absolutely! It's been a blast. Like I think that's one of the coolest things about being a critique in a critique. My words today, guys. In a critique group, is you get to see like you think about it, it's like, oh, it can really help me grow, it helps my work. But no, the cool thing is like you get to see all these other amazing things that other people are working on too, and like you grow from that as well. At any rate, that's our Kickstarter. We're doing pretty good, and I'm really excited. And now I'm thankful for where we are. Thank you if you're watching this and you supported the project. I can't tell you how much that means to us. Um, this is for a lot of us. For me, for example, this is going to be the first time that I've ever been able to hold my work in my hand, aside from like printing it off from my little desktop printer and looking at it. And that's going to be pretty crazy and amazing. And it just having everyone's support is amazing. And also, if you supported it, I think you're gonna love the book. Like, I think it's a really good book, and we're very excited about it. Okay, so
That is
that's the Kickstarter stuff. So Bert, like you've talked a little bit about kind of your background and where you come from. Was there a moment where it kind of just clicked for you that you're like, no, I wanna do this. I want to make comics and grow and start putting it out there?
oh, that's a really good question. Um, I'll try to be brief. I think there are two moments um, that happened for me, kind of like a two-stage process, getting to where I am now. So the first was when I was in middle school, and I'm going to date myself. I'm a Gen Xer, and so I was coming of age in the mid to late '80s. And if you may or may not know, um, that was really when there really wasn't a lot of Japanese anime available in the U.S. It was a lot of, I mean, it was what it was, and I liked it all. But when I first saw some of the early Japanese anime that came in, I mean, that blew my mind away. It was rich, just so immersive, the world they built. And it really appealed to me because, I'm an Asian American kid growing up in the Midwest. Not a lot of people look like me. Not a lot of people, kind of have the same experience as me. And just the idea of these worlds being out there were just immensely appealing. So right away, that caught my imagination. And even then, I knew enough to know that it's hard to do animation as a solo act. Comic seems plausible. So that kind of planted the seed. Um, but it still took a long time for me to actually act on it. That was the first part. The second part came much later, shortly after I turned 40. believe it or not. And, I had drawn a comic strip in college, and it was, just such an important experience to me creatively. And I had gone on to grad school. I had a number of careers, had a family and kids, all of which were giving me an immense amount of joy. At the same time, being creative and comics in particular have always been in the background. And, Jeff, I don't think you've had your midlife crisis yet, but for me, there came a moment when I thought, this is something you'd wanted to do for such a long time. And you're at this point of your life where I felt like I needed to do one of two things. Either A, I needed to embrace it and lean into it and really make something of it, or B, I just needed to let go of it gracefully and say, I'm okay if this isn't in my life. Right? I didn't want to want and not do.
Right.
And
Yeah.
obviously, you could.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah. So I can. I was also a Midwestern anime kid a bit, and yeah, I was not. So I'm like a shoulder generation. I don't really fully fit in either Gen X or the millennial generation. Um, but at the time, yeah, anime was still, it was relegated to a tiny little section of the Sam Goody store. That's where you found it. And Sci-Fi Channel had Saturday morning anime, and that was like that was about it. You couldn't. There was no Crunchyroll. There was no like Toonami, Adult Swim, any of the stuff that's out there now. Um, but yeah, it blew me away as well, and I was like, yes, I hope I get to enjoy this my whole like life. Um,
Uh, and now it's unbelievable what I have access to now. I mean, I was amazed back when Barnes and Noble was still a big thing, and just seeing all those rows of manga. I was so jealous. I would have loved to be a kid then. And then now Netflix and Disney Plus, it's just everywhere. It's just such an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, it's incredible how ubiquitous. I mean, and I think that speaks to what's really, how much there is to it. There's something that is beyond just being like it looks neat or snazzy. Like there's this secret sauce that comes between like the story and the graphics, and it just has a feel to it that just hits, I think, so many people right. Um, I mean, I was like on YouTube the other day, and I even saw like McDonald's has its own series of like anime shorts that it's done, um, which is they're pretty well done, honestly. But it's incredible, yeah. So do you have
Uh,
any?
and
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add another full circle moment for me, because I grew up, I'm a Star Wars kid, and so I saw all the original trilogy in the theaters. And so when they started doing Star Wars anime, that blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, these worlds that mean so much to me are really coming together.
Yes, absolutely. Also, similarly, Star Wars kid. I think we share quite a bit in common, actually, in terms of interests. No, I was just gonna ask if you had. I'm sure you do. What are some of your favorites in terms of anime, manga? What really inspired you?
My goodness. Well, nothing recent. So the very first anime, the one that sparked it all off, was a series called Robotech. I don't know if you remember that, but that was, and then for those who don't know, is an American import of a classic, giant transforming robot anime called Macross. So I love that. And then not too long after that, Akira came out, and that my admiration to it is a whole other level. It's a piece of art. Um, and then not only the anime was amazing, but when I discovered the manga, I don't know, maybe not a lot of folks know that the director, writer of Akira also did like a 6 volume anime or manga, and I love the manga even more than the anime. It's like a novel.
Really?
It truly is a graphic novel. So I read that every so often. So those are some of my big influences. Other one, um, I had with my through my kids, I became a big fan of Studio Ghibli, which was not around when I was younger, but I really just love just how hand drawn and how handcrafted it is. And for those who are Ghibli fans, Hayao Miyazaki also did his own manga on the side. And so one of my, like must read is his manga version of Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind. Again, much longer, much more in depth than the anime of the same name. It again another novel in its own right. And one thing I want to say about that before I move on, what really influenced me about Ghibli and also the Nausicaa manga in particular is how, and I've always loved this about Ghibli, um, compared to I think a lot of American stories, he treats all of his characters with so much empathy. No one is truly evil. Everyone has everyone is human. Even if people do things that are not good and even hurtful and even maybe seem cruel, he has a way of humanizing them beautifully. And sometimes people who turn out to be the adversaries become, the allies in the end. And so that really inspired me as a creator that um, no one's really evil. The best villains, even the best villains, have deeply human motivations.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Yes.
maybe if you don't necessarily agree with the how they do it, you can understand why they do it.
Right. There
And
has to be like
just
an on
to
ramp. Right. Like there's not. There has to be an on ramp. That nobody's just born like bad. Like they don't just decide arbitrarily. I'm just gonna like break stuff and hurt people because it's fun. Like there's a reason.
uh, and it actually makes the not only the villain more empathetic, it actually makes them scarier because I think that if you can relate to why the villain does things, it makes the dark side that much more seductive. To go to the Star Wars metaphor. Um, Last thing I'll say in terms of my go-to, then I'm done, is Bone. I started collecting comics when Bone came out as a comic book, and so the storytelling. I mean, that taught me about humor. That was such a perfect blend of animation sensibility brought into comics. It's so fluid, so light on its feet. Um, and the way it went through these phases, first it seemed like a kids comic, and then it was zany and wacky and slapstick, and then in its final form brought it all together into just this sprawling Lord of the Rings style epic. I mean, it's truly inspiring.
Oh, that's awesome. I so Bones is I hate to admit it is one that I actually haven't read and don't have a lot of familiarity with.
Oh, well, it's a classic. And one of the thing, another deeply personal connection I have to Bone is that, when I twin daughters and now they're in college, but when they were old enough to go beyond like picture books, things like the little kitty books, one of my first agenda items was to introduce them to reading through comics. And so I would actually read Bone to them and I do all the voices and I went through all the volumes and I mean, they loved it so much so that I probably read through both 3 or 4 times
Really?
with them
Wow.
before they were able to read.
Oh, that's so
It's
awesome.
so much fun.
I love that. I love that. And I think yeah, it's interesting like seeing how ubiquitous as a parent, seeing how ubiquitous graphic novels are now for kids. It's truly a golden era. Like it wasn't always like this, and it's really a joy to see.
And if I could just add a quick thing, what I really, even though there's a lot of stuff for kids, and that's wonderful, what I appreciate now as a parent are the books that appeal to both or multiple audiences, right? You can enjoy Bone as a kid, and you can appreciate it as an adult. Just like, yeah, I don't know if you grew up watching Sesame Street, but I'm just amazed when I see the clips now as an adult. It's so sophisticated. It's so well thought out. Even and like Looney Tunes, like there's some stuff there, some jokes there that I didn't appreciate it until I was an adult. And like, oh, I live in New York City. I know exactly, the in joke that he's talking about. So, that's the kind of stuff. Who knows where our dreams are going to take us? But I would love to be able to do that in my own work, right? Is to make something that you can enjoy at one age, at one stage of your life, and also at another age when you also have another set of life experiences under your belt.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy about kid stuff today. Again, as like a 80s, 90s kid, there's so much stuff that they're just like, just throw it out there. As long as it's colorful, kids will like it. Like there wasn't perhaps as much thought. And I think also some of it has to do with just the growing of any craft over time. Because there's such a volume of previous work for things to stand out and get accepted, the bar just keeps raising, really. But it's so nice to see things that kind of like anyone can pick up and enjoy at any age. Like it's got stuff for everybody.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned earlier, it caught my ear when you said comic collecting. So are you a comics collector?
Actually, am not. I went into it for a little bit in when I was in college in the '90s when comics had a big renaissance. And actually, what pulled me into comics then was when Jim Lee made a big splash, and he was super inspiring to me because when I first saw his name, I assumed he was related to Stan Lee for some reason. Then I was amazed to discover he's an Asian American and, at the top of the game. And so that was super inspiring. So I was a huge fan of Jim Lee and I followed his run with X-Men. Superhero comics wasn't something I stayed with because I didn't grow up with it. So I didn't stay with it for that long. And I think, in all honesty, I think the reason why I didn't stay collecting comics too long is that after a while, not even the soap opera element, but the way that reality was so porous in the comics, it just didn't stick with me, right? It's like people come, people go, characters, horrible things happen to characters, and then they come back. And, I realized that if you want to be a true fan, like of X-Men or Superman or Batman, it's like, I feel like you almost have to be all in. There's a lot of lore, and I just wasn't ready for that.
That's true. That makes sense. Yeah. Similarly, I liked comics, read comics. I have a stack, like a little bit of a stack, but nothing too crazy. Um, but yeah, I didn't follow week by week for years. I think the biggest, most closely I followed was when like I was a kid and I'd go to the grocery store with my parents and I would just like park myself in front of the comic book rack while they were doing the grocery shopping, and just read and catch up.
Goodness, I'm so glad you said that, Jeff, because I feel like we to have experienced that. I feel to me, and maybe I'm showing my generational bias. I feel like that's one of the purest ways to experience comics, right? It's present in kind of like the everyday, right? Like I remember reading them at the grocery store. I remember reading them at the drugstore. It's just like there in an everyday setting. And I feel like comics became very specialized. And at first, I thought that was a great development. It's like, oh, we can super focus on it. But I think it also became a little niche, or really niche. And I think as a creator, I'll tell you why, Jeff, but I feel like there's something that kind of ties to my journey again, growing, coming from where I came from and feeling like I was an outsider and then trying to find my place in. I really missed the way comics were really part of everyday life. And I think like now, if you look at the numbers, comics don't sell nearly as much as even manga, or more people know about Marvel movies than Marvel comics. And I think that speaks to how those other formats are just so much more accessible to people than the way comics have evolved. Anyway, that's a bit of a
No,
rabbit hole. We
that's
don't have to go there. But
there's like a whole conversation there, and we can have it if you want. I don't. It's a deep dive about about things like, because now screens, right? They're everywhere. Video is king. I mean, we're sitting here on Twitch.tv, right? Um, People enjoy the video format. It's a little bit less effort, but um, I do think there's something interesting. Comics, even though in some ways they're more specialized, they're still kind of tucked in everywhere, right? They're embedded a little bit everywhere you look. Like, Sunday Funnies. I know physical newspapers are not as much of a thing anymore, um, but they're still out there. If you go through Instagram, it doesn't take you too long before you start running into comics being posted there. Um, so it's interesting. I think there's like capital C comics that is like a whole specialized thing and a whole world and genre. And then there's kind of this like not undercurrent, but there's kind of this comics as the connective fiber that's as still a mean of communication.
Uh,
Hey,
yeah, I agree. I think. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, I was just saying hey to chat. Welcome on in, Jax. It's good to see you. So I'm here with Bert Tzeng. We're talking about an anthology project, a book that we are both a part of that just got funded on Kickstarter, and talking comics and creation and all that kind of stuff. I hope you're having a good day. Welcome on in, and feel free to type any questions you have in the chat.
Welcome.
But you were saying, Bert?
Well, I don't remember. But if I could throw out one thing that's been percolating through these different topics, I remember something Brad Bird said, the guy who wrote and directed The Incredibles. To me, it's still one of the best superhero movies. Uh, he, I remember him strongly resisting the idea of animation being a genre. Instead, he says it's a format, and the difference being there's no one kind of animated movie. It's just a way of showing lots of different kinds of stories. I feel comics is the same way. Comics is not about superhero movies, superhero stories, nor is it about, the prevailing trends on, like, say, web platforms like, Young Romance. It's not about one thing. And so it's interesting. It's liberating when you have a story you want to tell and you enter this format because, it's really yours. To your point about how how far you can reach, which to me gets into something that we've talked about a lot in the Kids Comics Unite space, which is the road to getting exposure, which oftentimes people think of as traditional publishing. I think there's that tension there, right? That even though we as creators, many of us think of comics as a format, a genre. I think a lot of times the road to getting your work out there, you run up against the expectation that comics is about a certain subject matter or for a certain audience.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's something interesting. I love a lot of what you said there. I think one of the interesting things that you kind of called out there is there are similarities in comics and animation as a format. Because really, at their DNA level, they're both sequential art, um, which I think is kind of fascinating. I know that obviously there's clear points of divergence. You have to have written word in comics in order to kind of support that half of the equation and move the story along, where you've got dialogue in movies. But it's interesting kind of watching animation and comics and being like, well, they're actually very similar. And I know there's always the saying
Cool.
animators are just are actors with pencils. And I think there's a lot of the same thing to be said about comic writers and illustrators. Um, I mean, I know for me, when I'm drawing a character making an expression, I make that expression. I can't not do it. Um,
Oh yeah, 100%. That actually reminds me, one big stage in my development as an aspiring creator. When just for a little context, when I was in college and I did that comic I mentioned to you, I wasn't yet brave enough to do my own writing, so I partnered with a person, another student, who wound up becoming my best friend, still is, and he did the writing. And then once we were out and, I still wanted to keep going, I took on the challenge of like, well, now I have to be the writer. And so that led me to think about character. And that led me into this whole other world, not only thinking about character from the drawing lens, like you were saying. So yeah, I had to think about, gesture, acting through the body posture and then acting through the facial expressions. I really, really, for the first time, thought about that very deeply. And then as a writer, I thought that I had to think about the emotional journey. And like that applies not just in comics, but it applies in or animation. I mean, that's just storytelling. So I feel like really love about comics. It's a blessing and a curse. Blessing is comics. You can create worlds and you can create characters that don't exist anywhere. So it's a tremendously exciting to me. Then the curse is when anything's possible, at least to me, it's a challenge to me to really up my game, right? Like, and you've seen this, you've helped me through this, in creating my story, which is set in a science fiction universe. So you not only are an actor, you're a costume designer, you're a set director, you're a set decorator, and then when you go into coloring, you're a production writer, and there's a lot of things that you want to learn as well.
Yeah, you're really, as a comic creator, you kind of become a one stop shop for everything. It's everything from cinematography to lighting to, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
That'd be crazy too.
So I'm pausing for a moment because I'm trying to think, because there's so much stuff that I wanted to talk to you about. I'm trying to figure out which one to pick right now. I think that right now, because what kind of flows naturally is you've talked a little bit about your creation process. Sorry, I'm just removing the Florida laser sun from my eyes. Um, so you talked a bit about process, and I think you do something really amazing in terms of uh, sharing so much of your process. So you'll see scrolling beneath Bert's name there. We have his Substack is one of the nameplates that's kind of going through. Um, Bert, you are so prodigious with Substack. Could you tell us a little bit about it? If you want to share anything of it, we can do that.
Yeah, sure. Happy to answer whatever you're curious about. Let me just preface this by saying this came about because I was fortunate enough to find a community in Kids Comics Unite. Um, Kind of going back to what you were saying about the challenge of like, there's so much you can do. And, for me, I want to do everything well. And there's that natural professional voice. And that's kept me from trying a lot of new things or being willing to break through, right? To get to the hard stages until you finally find your, find your stride and break through, which is what makes community so important to me because number one, there's so many people doing great, amazing things that can be a really powerful example for you. Just as important, if not more, find the right people. They support you no matter what you want to do, no matter what state it is. They can give you the permission slip that you are not willing to give yourself. Okay, so this is all backdrop for how I got into Substack. How I so the initial idea behind this was, when I first got into Kids Comics Unite, I think like a lot of us, the thing that we originally think we're going to do, get out of this, is I'm going to learn how to develop a pitch, and I'm going to learn how to find an agent, and I'm going to get a publisher, and I'm going to be on my way to being traditional public. One of the first things I learned about, kind of the realities I had not been aware of, the idea of marketing. And Jeff and you and Ashley and I had been through a lot of this involved in the anthology, and we can talk about that. In terms of marketing your own work, and not just your own work, but yourself, like all of that was, number one, completely alien to me. Number two, absolutely terrifying. I had in the back of my mind early on this idea, like, well, at some point you got to learn to talk about yourself. you got to be willing to put yourself out there, not just your work out there, but you yourself as a creator out there. And so at some point, you got to do it. I'm just not comfortable. I'm just so I was in a bit of paralysis for a good chunk of time being in kid comics. Um, so part of a number of critique groups, and so been blessed to learn from many examples. So in one of my other critique groups, there's another creator there who just effortlessly put out beautiful Substack posts, just very revealing about not just their work, but also about themselves. The person, what's behind the person who made these things. And so I just summoned up the courage, because we'd worked together, and I knew they were supportive. They would be supportive of me. I knew it would be a safe space. I could have a safe conversation. So I just asked them, like, hey, can you walk me through your Substack process? This is so wonderful because they just said, oh, I just do this, 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 this. I didn't take that as like a manual, like I must follow this approach. But just the fact that it was so organic and fluid for them, it just made me opened me up to what's possible. Like, hey, just hearing how another person does it is actually very empowering for me. Because once I see a process before me, then I can start thinking about it. Like, okay, what would my process be? So I know this is getting a little long, but that's really it. So that's what got the Substack started, is this idea of like, well, this is one way to do it, and now I feel like I have a permission slip to try my own way. So what wound up working was I decided. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, there's another moment that was very powerful. I gotta talk about that. That other one creator helped open me up to that how. And so the impetus, what really kicked off the Kickstarter, was actually part of the anthology process, right? Because like and Ashley how often I see you all with the stuff I'm developing along the way, whether it's script or outline or thumbnails or pencils, just to make sure that I get as many eyes on it so I'm not missing anything. And so after we made that first submission deadline, getting your submission package in, uh, one of those critique partners just mentioned, just out of nowhere, said, hey, you know what? I really enjoyed watching the process, watching your pages develop. And it'd be really cool if you just wrote that up. And boom, that was it. I knew it. Like that's when I knew, okay, I have everything I need to start Substacking.
That's awesome. And first off, I echo like what an amazing community it is, like having kids comics unite out there. If you're a creator, by the way, out there, you like to make comics, you're looking at creating comics for kids, and that's anything from early readers through young adults, 18, 20 even year olds. Kids Comics Unite is a great resource you can join for free. There's an accountability group. There's all sorts of tools and people ranging from people who are new to the industry to people who are published many, many times over. People who have written for Marvel, DC, all those things. Oh, hey, Ashley. So, fun fact: Ashley's not actually here. But she's tuning in from a side thing. So happy to see you here.
Hey, Ashley.
But yeah, KCU is it's such a good community. If you're interested in getting started but you don't know what to do, start there. Just show up to a meeting, say hey on the general feed, and get going. But yeah, I think it's funny as a creator, like if you're in a critique group, you do get to see people's process, and that's a very lucky thing. Um, but I think for a lot of people who don't create, who don't make comics, who don't make art, um, pulling back that curtain is so interesting to them, and it's so cool to get to share that. But even as a creator, it's still every time because we all make comics, and I know they're all different comics. But if you look at it in a very like zoomed out view, it's like we all make the same thing, but we all go about it very different ways. We all have very different voices. Our processes are different. Our tools are different. So getting to see the way that another comics creator does it is it's fascinating, and it also is like, oh, that's a way better way than what I'm doing. It's kind of cool.
agree more. And if I could just add to that, Jeff, because what you say is so on point. A couple of things I learned to really get what I can out of that process is it takes a lot of vulnerability to meaningfully participate in a critique group because you have to be willing to put yourself out there and subject it to, constructive criticism. And that can be really difficult because especially when you're just starting off and like you're maybe not sure about yourself, maybe you don't have a lot of confidence, it can be really hard because we all want to be validated. We all want to feel like what we do matters and that we matter. So it's a lot of vulnerability to say, like, here's my work. What do you think about it? And in particular, if there's something you think isn't working, please tell me. So it takes that. And then on the other part of that is when you hear back is to really commit yourself to learning, right? And this is
Mm-hmm.
why I really treasure the community that we have in our critique group, which I think would reflect the vibe within Kids Comics Unite, which is we're here to support each other. Like, and that's the beautiful thing about it. I really have not experienced many communities like this in my lifetime, where we have different people like from different countries, different ages, different walks of life, and different goals, right? But the one thing that so many of us have in common is that we want to get our work out there, and we all hesitatingly support each other in that. And so I guess my point is that when you have that community, there's so much you can learn from. I've gotten so much, like Jeff, what you're doing now with Twitch and live streaming, it's blowing my mind. It's like opening up all these possibilities. I feel like so again, if you are open to learning, what you can from people, like being in a community like this, it's a smorgasbord buffet.
Yeah, it's incredible. Sorry, I like was trying to keep track of a bunch of things I want to ask, and I totally blanked out and forgot everything that I knew for a moment. Um, no, it's oh my gosh, what was I gonna say? Oh, it's one of those
Can
days,
I
right?
can I sidetrack while you think?
Oh,
Can
absolutely. Go
I
ahead. Yeah,
can I
yeah.
divert while you?
100%. Go for
I
it.
did not realize. So I didn't realize because I don't think I'd seen your and Ashley's anthology story. I didn't realize you had a D&D element to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was one that because I had always had kind of this like, I had always been interested in things that were D&D adjacent, and I finally fell down that deep dark hole. Maybe that's an ominous way to
Oh,
describe
wow.
it. I love it. It's great. But I finally like forayed into it and got started, and I was really into it. About the time that we were trying to figure out what the comic idea was, so I pitched a little bit of it to Ashley, the kind of like the rough idea, and then she, being the writer, was able to really flesh it out into something, and that's our four page comic that probably could have been a 6 page comic if I felt like I had time to do 6 pages.
So cool. You and Ashley both play D&D?
I right now it's I play actively with my daughter. Ashley joined in like the early stages of the campaign. Actually, our library runs the campaign that we joined into, and it's amazing.
Oh, that's
By the
right.
way, Orange County Library System, Florida, incredible. But yeah, so Ashley's played a bit. Um, I think she is less excited about like the improv type elements and that type of stuff, which maybe is why it was a little harder to sell. Um, but yeah, we both have played. I do continue to play. Super into stuff like if you watch Critical Role on YouTube or here on Twitch, they're live here first before it goes to YouTube. Um, yeah, I did remember what I was gonna say. It was a miracle. But what I was gonna say is I think another thing that's hard about the vulnerability of the critique process that you brought up is the best stories are the stories that contain like a chunk of your heart in it, right? And the most raw part of you often. And like you're putting that
Wow.
out there for people, and in a critique group, you're putting it out there for their kind of judgment. And I can guarantee you, if there's something in your story or art that you feel squishy about, you're like, this isn't quite right. I'm not sure what's going on, but maybe they won't notice it. That's the first thing that they're gonna call out. Um,
Oh my God. You made such a great point. I cannot boost that anymore. It's so funny. You're right. Like that is just really exquisite torture about being an aspiring creator, right? Is that um, most healing stories are the ones that touch on deep emotional truth. That means as a creator, you have to be able to access that. And when you're just starting out, the best way to access deep emotional meaning is you pull it from within your own experience. That is really hard. And it's interesting because let's be fair, right? Because most media out there is not all like autobiographical, like deeply personal, like deeply emotional. So I think when you're starting out and you're trying to get noticed and you're trying to establish your voice, I think it's hard to avoid. And a real struggle because again, like again, the point about vulnerability and even stepping into the world of becoming an aspiring creator is very you feel very it's very scary. And so a lot of times it's easy to get stuck saying like, well, me being out here as far as I am is as far as I'm willing to go, and I'm not really willing to go that any further than that, into minding myself. Um, Funny though, because like I think that's when in critique groups you really see a split. Like there are a lot like I support everyone in all my critique groups. Special place in my heart for the people who are just willing to go there. Oh yeah, I don't want to say too much. I don't want to say too much because the person's not here to talk about it. But Jeff, you and I both know a creator who was trying to get work done on one of their projects, and it was good. I mean, it was an interesting one. And then they happened to mention kind of casually, like, oh, you know what? I had the first version. It was much rougher, but mentioned the fact that that's what caught the attention of their agent. And we were like,
Mm.
you gotta go to that one. The one with the heart. It doesn't matter how rough it is. You can bring the polish level up, but it's hard not to. If it doesn't have a beating heart, that's hard to replace. And so I really appreciate that about critique groups because I think we all say that to them. We said we want to see the heart, and I really have come to rely on you and Ashley and our critique partners to help me make sure the heart is there. You know what? It feels like a trust fall. Every session feels like a trust fall, right? Things that vulnerability because it does not go away. But that's the magic of critique group, right? Is that we've all come to know that like I am safe putting my heart Jeff's hands and Ashley's hands, and they will honor it and help make it better. And when you do that, I mean, it's so powerful. I don't know, it sounds like a cult maybe, but hey, I can't do without it now.
No, it's yeah, and finding a good critique group is important. I think at this point we have Ashley and I. We started our journey trying to do picture books before we eventually switched to graphic novels because we had a story that didn't fit, and then we realized we just loved the format so much. Um, but between picture book and graphic novel critique groups, we've been part of at least half a dozen. And some of them work for a time, some of them don't really work at all, and some of them are going to end up being like your lifelong besties, at least within the industry. And it's kind of incredible. And we were talking about this with Sarah on Thursday night, how like you'll see at, SCBWI talks from these, mega seller things. I have a very vivid picture in my head of like Dan Santat, for example, in a talk that he was giving and showing like, the picture of him with his critique group. And I'm like, these are the people that are going to help support you. And like when you resonate with them and they can help bring those pieces out of you and you can fully trust them and their feedback, that is such a powerful thing.
Yeah, and it's something that's really special too, timing wise, because so I've heard of so many creators who are still in touch, like even big folks who are still with their original critique group when they were all aspiring writers because they knew you before you became big. So they'll give it to you straight, which is what you need.
Yeah, I think there's something important to that. I think there's important for a critique group to not be afraid to give you the hard critique a little bit. Um, but to do so gently, because I've been in some groups where it just felt like there was that one person who was just like knives out all the way, and that was their critique strategy. I'm not talking about you, just to be clear. This was a different past
I know, I
critique
agree. No,
critique group.
thank you.
Just to be clear, I think we've found some pretty good safe haven groups that are supportive and help really build and give like solid constructive critique. But yeah, there's some folks that are they want to take that red pen to everything, like just hardcore, whether it's beneficial to the story or not, and that's just kind of their way of contributing, or they're kind of like, it's easy to project expertise when you are criticizing everything. Um, but there's
That's
when you find the
unfortunate.
people you
But we,
trust, yeah, it's really important.
no, it's true. Well, wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. I didn't realize. It's funny. This may sound silly, but when I first joined, for folks who may not know, Jeff, you, and honestly, and we came together through a regular process that Kids Comic Studio does, where you know, I think once a year, Jana Marisima, who the organizer, founder, the grand guru of Kids Comics, facilitates this process where if you want to be part of the critique group, they'll ask you. And and so when I first went through that process, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I didn't so there's a part of me that maybe it's the perfectionist side that says like you got to start with your finish. So I would never dream of leading a critique group. Um, Even if it would be a struggle for me if I had a person in there like the kind you mentioned, I would hate it, but I wouldn't be brave enough to drop it. And then even when I wanted to seek out other critique groups because I just wanted to get as many trustworthy eyes on my work as possible, it still felt like I wasn't sure like this is something you could do, right? Am I being unfaithful to my critique group? So it's actually validating right now, in real time, Jeff, hearing that like, oh yeah, doesn't critique groups, no problem, come and go, no big deal, very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it is also something interesting to me. Like it's like a whole other door opens once you get into that critique and you start making the transition to sharing your work for the process of improvement. To be like, yes, I'm doing this. I'm putting it out there. I'm identifying that like I am a artist. I'm a writer. I'm an author. I'm both. Um, Here's my work. I want to get better. Please help me. And there's something very powerful in that first step, I think, as well, in terms of like getting out there and just like saying, yes, I'm going to put in the work. I'm owning this and I'm moving forward.
Can I add to that too? It
Mm-hmm.
even in situations where you're not getting feedback constantly, I found it to be a very powerful accountability tool and almost like a productivity hack in that, and especially this helped me during the anthology process, is that because we were meeting every week, I tried as much as possible to have something to show you guys, right? So like if I'm working on thumbnails, I want to make sure to have a couple pages of thumbnails to show you guys. And it wasn't even the point is not to get feedback on the pages. The point is to have something for my group in case they had something to say. But even if it was like, oh yeah, cool, looks good, and carry on, that was so helpful for me because I, I I bet we've all had this experience where when you're working solo, it can be really hard to motivate yourself. It can be hard to keep yourself on a schedule unless there's something kind of outside yourself that makes you want to work for it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Especially if you're creating something like a comic where you don't intend to put anything out there till it's done. There's a long span. Like comics take time. And there's a long span where you feel like you're working in the vacuum. And then there's always the dread of putting something out there and then just getting crickets and not knowing, like, is it because it's good? Are people liking it? Like, what's happening? Um,
Well,
so you,
and that I think kind of stuck. Go ahead.
oh no, that's okay. I was going to transition on. So if you got something more to say, go for it.
I have a quick transition too because I think the I was surprised how powerful the experience of doing a short story for the anthology was. And after we finished our stories and submitted, I was like, I want to move on to the next. I want to keep this thing going because it's so good for me. My process of just continuing to work, just having some other like what's the next thing? What's the next deadline? Which is which I'm so grateful to you and Ashley and the rest of our group, because when I mentioned that, like, hey, you know what, this I love the anthology vibe. I wish there's another one coming up. And I don't know how that got started, but this idea kind of bubbled up among us, like, well, why don't we aim to do something like that, our own version, our low key anthology? We kind of coined it.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, that's like, I'm excited for seeing how this kind of evolves. I know it started out as like a critique group project, and now it's kind of growing a little bit. Like there's a few other folks that are interested in joining in, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting Venn diagram where there's people in our critique group who are interested, and I knew other folks in our anthology sphere who were interested in something similar going too. And I mean, the way I look at it is, if you got people who are interested in doing something, they have that in common, and they work well together. Why not bring them together and see what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I guess we kind of just danced around it. What did you have anything more you wanted to say about the low key anthology idea?
First of all, I love I love the other term you coined when we were talking about I think sort of the vibe and the environment we wanted to set, because just for background for those who may not know, the way the KCU anthology kind of structured itself was really impressive. It was also a big effort. I mean, a lot of people came together who were interested in producing this thing, and then we formed into committees, and then those committees had chairs. I mean, it was really kind of surprising how you take something that's kind of a volunteer, like it's volunteer, right? It's completely grassroots. Like people raise their hand to do this, and then people automatically kind of self-structured, which it definitely has its advantages. I think though, what I was very pleasantly surprised when we started talking about, this a separate, a follow-on project, a side project, how I think a lot of people just said, like, hey, we just want to do something super casual, right? And it's almost like a lot of the things that we felt maybe a little confined about, or maybe we're a little slow, or maybe a little, kind of maybe a little bureaucratic about the way the anthology went. We wanted to lean away from it. And you came in and said, it's an anthology. I love that.
Yeah, well,
Um,
because right, the idea with the anthology and this whole KCU for Really Kids Comic Studio project is we're learning by doing. It wasn't just like hey, we want to get something out there in the world. It was like, hey, let's all learn about self-publishing. Let's learn about marketing. Let's learn about how you work with an anthology group, how you put together something for print, and so it became this very democratic kind of like we all have to be on board, like we all need to be in on this decision, and then also to split it up and make sure we kind of had groups doing all the things and we shared expertise where people had it. We basically created a publisher. You could easily have replaced the word committee with department, and it would have made total sense. It's very impressive, and that's one of the reasons I think a lot of us hope that another one is coming on that front, because it's like we've stood up this structure. We now know how to do this. It would be super cool to use what we built.
that's a great point. And that was really powerful. That we built infrastructure and process. So that was in a short amount of time. When you put it that way, I think that's what's appealing about this low key anthology idea we've been kicking around, and we'll probably launch pretty soon, which is, so it's not an either or, it's kind of a yes and, right? Like I would love KCU to start up another full blown, buy our book, buy the book, process wise anthology. I think I was surprised how many people, myself included, was like would also want a bit of a palate cleanser, right? So, kind of in contrast to having departments and committees that has assigned roles and their assigned team members, people who wanted to lean in the opposite direction. Because I think there was there was a natural tension there, right? You wanted people who could do something well to do the thing for the anthology. On the other hand, there are in a lot of ways, I think a lot of us also wanted to do the opposite. You want to try something you had never done before. And so, you know, a lot of what inspired this idea was just people saying like, hey, I'm on this committee, but you know what? I really would have loved to have tried this. And so I think the idea behind our low-key anthology is like we're going to try to uncommittee, undepartment it. Disaster, who knows? But some people have already raised their hand and said like, I would really like to try this part of it. And not just what's really powerful, not just out of idle curiosity. Some people are saying, like some people who are more freelance in terms of their profession are saying like, hey, I want to learn how to develop these skills so I can bring it to client work. I'm like, wow, hey, do that. Take that interest and run with it. If you're willing to do the work, why should we not invite you to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I think what's intriguing to me is the idea of doing something that is um, a bit more like agile and lightweight, because it's not a massive group project. It's not a learning experience. Like it's like, okay, we've learned some of these pieces. We like It's like in math when you learn the long way to do it, and then after that they teach you the quick way. Like in some ways, so it's like, okay, well, now that we've seen this kind of like the bigger process, what happens if we do this? How fast can we do this? How lightweight can we make it? How easy can we make this?
I think that's a fun challenge. And it actually reminds me of the challenge of creating a short story by itself. I mean, folks who may not create stories, I think people don't realize how much harder it is to do something short than do something long. The
Yes.
discipline of creating a short story, getting like you only have X number of pages, that's it. Actually a lot harder than being like, oh, I'm going to give myself 20, 30, however many pages. I feel like, to your point, you raise a really exciting point, Jeff, which is we went full retail, full service, business model or production model for the anthology. I think it'd be a great challenge to see like how much can we take out of it and still get something out.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it kind of gives a good picture of like what already are two sides of the comics world. You have these, what's become huge is the traditional publishing industry, these kind of large monolithic houses um, that are this kind of big process and all these departments and all that. But then there's like another side of comics that is this very like indie, like photocopy my zine and like, just stick it wherever it can go. Um, so we kind of channel both the sides of energy by doing the low key anthology, um, kind of alongside the bigger KCU project.
It's exciting. So, well, I mean, who knows? And we all, at this stage, all we've done is just floated an idea among ourselves, and people love the idea, and we're just going to take the next step. So we'll see. We might look at this talk a year from now and be like, well, that was a bust, but that's part of the adventure.
Yeah, so I guess we'll go with a stay tuned on that one, and see where things are going. And if we're looking for folks, we'll put the word out. So
Yeah, it's actually just the last thing I'll say. I'm actually getting more excited the more I talk to folks about it because I think like the folks who identify with that kind of spirit of producing stuff are really enthusiastic. And as you and Ashley know, within the KCU community, there's been this organic kind of grassroots interest in putting on zines. So there's like a zine club is starting. And so like what a wonderful time for us to be starting up this thing. People are attuned to it, so that gives us a base of people who are interested. Maybe want to contribute, maybe want to help produce it, maybe want to buy it. Who knows?
yeah, I think it's cool. Yeah, I think with a lot of creators, it's that there's like I just want to get my stuff out there, and for a lot of us, that's like I'm just gonna throw it up on my website. I'm gonna shoot it out on Instagram, but having the chance to be able to like, hey, there's here's a platform, here's a book, and if you want to put a short comic in, just get it to us by this time, and then getting it out there. I think it's exciting. It's very exciting the chance to like do this different format and jump on that train, I guess.
So I've noticed this too with the KCU anthology of how powerful, like how much it uplifts your work and your name and your brand to be part of something like big. Like and so this is exactly why I wanted to join the anthology. When Janice said she wanted to do something, I said I would love to have my work associated with that. And so I feel like, even if we do something low key, something super casual, just among us, but what a powerful way of let's say, Jack, you get your story and your work out among people I know, or vice versa, or someone else is part of it. I think it has a similarly powerful effect. And actually, it's something I kind of stumbled into. Like I said, going back to when I first joined KCU, and I was thinking about like, oh, how do you get identified? How do you get noticed? How do you get selected? And I think one of the things that seemed very intimidating to me at first is that people want to know like what's your audience. I was like, oh my God, I'm working hard enough to put together a story. I got to go out and build an audience. That sounds terrifying. I have a lot of, like this is I think a very beautiful and organic way of building an audience, of just, getting together with like-minded people, supporting each other, and you boost each other.
It
And
is.
we'll all come away with we can take to like zine festivals and something we can market. Like, yeah. Anyway, I could go on.
No, it's also part of like this just kind of the sometimes it feels almost Sisyphus like process of pushing the rock up the hill of like building an audience, finding like I make this work. This comes from my heart, my voice. This is me sharing the stories that mean something to me. Now I have to figure out who wants to read it. Um, and I think that's part of the draw of traditional publishing to a lot of people, because you're like, oh well, certainly, they know that a publishing house knows the tracks to get this out in front of the people, the potential audiences. Our readers are in general kids, but if adults want to read them, we're totally cool with that too. Um, but I think that was what a big part of fear whenever I hear like self-publishing. It's like, oh, I've got to like warehouse books, and I've got to figure out who is going to read my book and tell them that this exists, and I've got to find communities. So I think all the little things that you can do that kind of organically build that, snowball that audience, are very helpful.
And it's true. And I don't know how much herself has said this, talked about this point. But I know that, and the folks know Jana knows she has a deep, deep publishing background. I mean, she was there at the creation of Scholastic graphic novel imprint. She helped found it. She helped bring Jeff Smith to Scholastic, and that gave Bone a huge audience. Now she is, an agent, representing a lot of graphic novelists, many whom we know. But, I've heard her say that in Kids Comics Unite, and she's a dreamer, she thinks big. Like one of the things she hopes is that the community and, this anthology kind of represents it, can help provide an alternative publishing platform to traditional, because it's incredibly be conservative, right? They don't look to build trends, start trends. They don't look to take chances on people. I mean, it makes sense, right? Especially the way the market's gone and all the competition, how tough it is to, get dollars from readers. Of course you're going to go with what the person, whatever that is. But, it's like a chicken and the egg problem, right? Because the next big author had to start off somewhere, and so who's going to provide the platform for them? And I know in her heart of hearts, Jana wants to be part of that, which is incredibly inspiring to a lot of us.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about the KCU anthology project, as well as like any effort to create something, is like you're sharpening your skills by contributing, by being a part of it. Like I've learned so much from being a part of this KCU anthology group, and every little bit, like because of the bar now that's set there, if you want to go the traditional publishing route, which not everybody does, um, the bar is so high for how polished you need to be, how you need to know how to do this or that, how you need to kind of have a built-in audience that you're already bringing to the story. You need to have certain marketing tools available, because the publishers don't do that anymore as much, from everything I've heard,
It's
at least anecdotally. Projects like this are great
One
because you do
powerful
that.
uh, and one powerful addition to your point is that, again, another kind of thing I'd assumed, but turned out not to be the case when joining Kids Comics Unite, is that it's not an either or. It's not picked up by an agent and then this a publisher or self-published. I I've met a number of people who got their work traditionally published by starting off as a self-publisher. And like that's the beauty of today's marketplace. You can do a web comic, you can put out zines and table an event. Some of the most inspiring examples, that have motivated me, are people who just were doing their own thing, and then they print zines, and then they go table at a convention or a festival, and that's what gets them the agent. And to me, I don't like being like I'm placed in an either or situation, right? Either you have a pitch that wins or you're nowhere. That's incredibly discouraging. So I'm always, for me, for my own sanity and just to keep me in what energizes me is focusing on the yes and. So I saw the anthology as a way of getting exposure. And, if I eventually make it into traditional publishing, like that could be a way to do it. Even doing a low key anthology, getting at least just continuing to put my work out there, it could be part of that equation. And, one actual real powerful task being part of the anthology and even planning a low-key anthology has done for me that I had not expected, Jeff, is it actually got me thinking about marketing myself in a
Yeah,
way I hadn't thought about even for the anthology, right?
it's true. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's marketing was not a part of my mindset for any of this. And actually, it was one of the things that you guys on the critique group helped Ashley and I look at. Even like when you're making your sample pages for a pitch, even if you're like pitching to an agent, that's marketing too. I thought it was like, oh, I need to just make the story pages as they would have happened in the actual full story, have them like exactly that way, and then just pluck them and hope that they like them. And then you guys were like, well, no, make sure you're telling the story, that you're catching the hook. It's okay if these pages wouldn't be adjacent in the final story because you're not trying to tell the full story. You're trying to get somebody interested in the story. That was such a like eye-opening piece of advice that you guys gave us. Realizing that and think about there's marketing actually in so many steps of anything you do. Like it's crazy. It feels like a lot, but then it makes
It
sense when you think about it.
makes sense. And also, what, it's funny, Jeff, because, reminding me of that moment, again, going back to the theme of what a wonderful thing a good critique group is, like, it's not like any of us had this, like, oh, I'm an expert in putting together a pitch, and so therefore, let me bestow my wisdom upon you, young Padawan. But, I remember that moment, and for my part, it came from a place of just being such a fan of your and Ashley's work, and hearing your concept and the emotional heart of the story, just really wanting to give it the best chance it could to catch someone's attention, in the format of that pitch. And so, when you told us, okay, the story's about this, Gesundheit is about this character and this journey, and we're like, it'd be in the pitch.
Thank you, by
I
the way, for
mean,
that. That's like, yeah, but
it
I think there's a really good point there about even if it's, I mean, you could call it marketing, but you can also just call it like knowing your audience, knowing your format, and making sure that you're giving your story the best chance to thrive, to have that, I guess, spark, if you will.
it's incredibly powerful, and this goes back to the marketing point too. Just being willing, and actually even enthusiastic to spread my wings. There's something weird about me. I still don't quite understand it, but it's hard for me to motivate myself to do something if it feels like it's just for me, right? It's like, oh, put yourself out there. Tout yourself on social media. Talk about this thing you did. If it feels like it's just for me, I'm like, ooh, that feels kind of icky and a little boastful. But like I said, that moment that got me doing the Substack. If someone says, "Hey, I really like learning about the process. Oh, well, I'll share you. What do you want to know? Right? And that was the simple hook for me to start substacking, right? It's just like, hey, kind of like what you were saying before, Jeff, like there's no one set process. There's no one set way to do things. So it's always helpful to see how someone else does it. Like either you adopt it or you don't, but it's helpful. And so like in a weird way, this idea of yourself out there, promoting yourself, saying like, hey, here I am, here's what I do, in a weird way, framing it as an act of service. It's like, hey, maybe this could really help someone. I can't tell you how powerfully motivating that is. That's what really helped inspire me to like market, right? It's like, hey, now that the anthology is out there, like I want to boost it because genuinely don't think of this as an opportunity for me alone. It's like, hey, it's I want to help boost lift this. I want to be the rising tide for this boat of me and 30 other creators. So like, I want to talk about it on myself. I want to. I want to boost it. It's real
Yeah,
interesting that experience.
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because marketing. I used to have a very different feel about it. It felt like you're the kid going door to door selling candy bars, right? Um, and nobody likes that feeling, I don't think. Um, but then I started realizing like so much of what really is important out there and the benefits of like any avenue of social media you choose, it's not about selling. It's about like just sharing part of yourself and people and making a connection, right? Like whether you're teaching, whether you're talking about like your life and what's going on or what led you to create this story, whether you're just being completely random and goofy, or like me, whether you're making people feel better about themselves by failing to draw a straight line about 20 times in a row. Um, it's about like the connection and the sharing of what's going on. Um, and it has the
Real.
side effect of like, yeah, when you've got something to offer or you're trying to ask for somebody's attention even for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, however long you're asking them to look at this thing. If they know you and they know you're a human, they're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. um, and it's way better than the like, hey, want to buy something? I don't think anybody likes that.
It's true. And yeah, I feel the same way. Like I don't know how people who work in a sales job do it because you're constantly putting yourself out there on behalf of the thing you're selling. And to me, I'll be honest. Like I for a long time lacked the confidence to do it, and I don't know, maybe I still do. But this was different because, yeah, I think there's such a powerful mission behind this. I mean, we wanted to tell stories about for those who may not know, the theme of our anthology is, let's go, meaning, people who go, like kids who go on different journeys in different settings, different places, different times, and they wind up, meeting fantastical creatures along the way. Why do I say this? I say this because feel like there's such a strong, I mean, this represents what I think is truly powerful about comics is that, all these different stories, all these different kinds of creatures, all these different kinds of characters, I it makes me very excited to think about the kids it can reach. The kids who might see a story and feel like, hey, I feel. And all the more powerful if, maybe they don't a lot of kids or know a lot of kids or know a lot of people who share that point of view. I mean, that is really powerful about really any art form. I think comics in particular.
Yeah, I think so. I think and comics are. I do think there's something that's very accessible about comics that helps. Like as its format in general, it's very intuitive, and there are some things that comics can do that other forms just can't, which are really interesting as an avenue for storytelling, but also for like, yeah, your voice comes through, and that reader reads it, and like, yes, somebody gets it, right? Like that's so important. Um, it ties into so many other angles, like representation as well.
True. It's funny. You're making me think, Steph, is that one of many things I didn't realize until I started down this path of really leaning into trying to create comics is that I part of my journey, again, feeling like the outsider in so many spaces I've been in. So, it's just a couple things. Like it's definitely challenging, but a couple things I'm really grateful to have this experience for is that, number one, it gave me a lot of empathy for people who feel similarly. Like, it doesn't take much now. If a person doesn't feel like they belong to something, like, I get it. Not only do I get it, but it just in my heart, I just like, oh, if there's a way for me to make you feel welcome and just valid, like recognized the way the younger version of me would have wanted. Like, I would love to be able to do that. And so that really motivates me as a storyteller, which is the unexpected thing, because if you had asked me 5 years ago, like, well, what kind of comics do you want to make? I told you, well, I grew up with Star Wars, and so I love science fiction, done martial arts for most of my life, so that's a very really important thing to me. But you know what? When I came time to choosing the story I was going to tell, like, this was my thought in the anthology, and I only had 6 pages to do it. What was the heart of the story I was going to tell? Well, yeah, sure, science fiction was going to be the genre, and sure, martial arts was going to be kind of in a sense, the setting or the things that the characters did. But it's hard, and I didn't discover this. I really didn't discover this until I fleshed out the concept. Really, the story actually it didn't come sink in until we had to go through this exercise of writing our mini bios. Right, we had to say, like, I only had it like I had what? How many characters? How many words they gave us? Like 80 words to say what you're about. Then when I had to do that, I was looking back at my story and I realized, what's really important to me are stories about finding a place where you belong. And I didn't even realize that while I was doing the story, but that's what it was. So I think that speaks to the power of just doing a story, telling a story. If you discover stuff about what's important to you, well, before you even realize it. So, like, now, Jeff, like, I gotta say, like, now that we've had some practice walking, like doing a short story, like, I just want to keep going. I want to keep walking, and then I want to pick up the pace. I want to start fast walking, and then, like, who knows? Maybe it'll turn into a jog, and maybe it'll turn into a run, and who knows?
Maybe a marathon. Sorry, I just really like the analogy. But yeah,
So,
absolutely. Well, so you sort of talked a little bit about, like, at this heart level, what your story is about. Did you want to say anything about the actual story and the world that it's set in?
yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So, I'll start with the second part. So, the world that I'm setting my stories in. So it is initially, okay, I'm going to completely cop to it, right? I'm a Star Wars kid. So the genesis of this universe is basically my version of like telling the Star Wars story through my lens. And so there is a mystical energy, generated. It is the energy of light, and it grounds us and it binds us. And so that was the fundamental idea. But here's where I brought in my own martial arts sensibility and my martial arts journey. One of the things I was really grateful to discover, I've been doing Shotokan karate. It's a type of traditional Japanese karate ever since college. And what really has kept me in it, this idea of learning how to bring out the most you can from your body, right? What's the most amount of power you can generate by training and conditioning and, just putting in the work. So I wanted to marry those two concepts. So, like, a life energy that you could use to supercharge your innate talent. And it's just a matter of training, learning to do the work, but also opening yourself up to the possibilities, right? It's like you have to be willing to do the work before you can discover what you can do. So, okay, that's just a long way of saying, um, so I created a universe of this mystical energy and order that has dedicated itself to learning about this energy, but also training people like how you can not only understand how this energy works, but how you can apply it to become a better version of yourself. And then kind of the service element, what will you do with that energy? How will you, what kind of difference can you make? Do you want to make with these abilities that you discovered? So that's the universe that I hope to eventually explore through more and more stories. Then for this particular story, and it was a real challenge. Can you imagine? This is big stuff, right? This is a big idea. Lots of ways this can go. Oh my God. I have someone that just showed up at my door and I can't say no to them. Can I just put it on pause for a second? I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
just
So I'm
gonna,
gonna actually I need to step away for a second too. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put us both on be right back, and then we'll come right
this
back
is
in
a
a second. So we've got about half an hour or so scheduled left. So we'll take a quick break. We'll come right back. Go ahead. I got you. All right. So we'll be right back, everyone. See you in just a minute. All right. Well, I'm back right now. Bert's still wrapping up whatever he's working on. But I just figured I'd take this chance to come and say hey, and I remind you all that we're here. We're talking with Bert Tzeng as part of our oh, hi. I hear Bert is back with us, but I was just saying we're here talking about the KCU Anthology, which is now fully funded, which is super exciting. Uh, yeah, I'm talking a little bit more about it. So I'm gonna bring Bert back on in here in just a second. All right, you're back. Welcome back. My computer is losing its mind. Hold on one second. Okay, we're good.
am I coming through?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, perfect. I am so sorry. This has just been a day of first. We're in the middle of this, my first ever live stream, and I look out my window, and who do I see on our doorstep? Some former neighbors who moved to North Carolina years ago. They're like standing out there. So anyway,
No, no
so
worries.
I
It's
got rid of them though, so I'm all yours now.
I mean, no need to get rid of people. It's cool. This is live streaming. There's folks who do this 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and life just happens, and that's okay. So no worries there. Um, yeah, trying to work out. So yeah, you're talking a little bit more about the universe of your stories and your anthology story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
I did want to say before we
okay.
go, the martial arts connection. I love it. I studied Taekwondo and Krav Maga. I previously studied them. I know we've got Patrick Lugo, who is embedded in the Kung Fu world. Maybe we should have like a three-person chat about martial arts and comics because that could be really interesting.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun. It'd be like, yeah, so many disciplines represented. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, martial arts. I'm not, yeah, I'd be curious to hear about your experience. I think martial arts is such a deep, deep pool of learning, right? Because depending on the discipline, there's not only that physical element, but there's like a lot of mental training you have to put yourself through, right? Because you have to have discipline. You have to learn how to push, get comfortable in your discomfort zone so that you can learn to do something that doesn't come naturally for you. And there can even be a spiritual element of it too, because the more you learn to do things with your body, that could be very, powerful, devastating. I think it changes you as a person. I think it changes how you carry yourself, right? The more powerful you become for a lot of people, I think it also brings out kind of gentleness or calmness that I didn't have when I started.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I love even when I wasn't actively practicing martial arts, I really enjoyed reading about the martial arts philosophy and how some of it did border on spiritual or paired with spiritual practices in its origins, and it's really neat stuff. And there's like a whole deep dive on like self discovery and realizations about the world that come through like the rigors of training
Very,
and learning yourself. Yeah. Anyway, this I wanted to know that connection because I thought that was really cool.
oh,
Um,
and that provides a good setting. All right, go ahead.
nope. Go ahead. I,
All right, Jeff,
yep. Can you
with
hear me?
you?
Okay. I noticed the stream is stuttering a little bit. I
Yeah, yeah.
might take the music off just to kind of free up a little bandwidth here in case that helps. So let's try that. Okay, it's a little quieter, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, if I may, I was going to say, what we're just talking about is a good segue to the topic of my short story for the anthology. May I go on?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So, again, I think that there's a challenge in trying to figure out like what's a nice bite-sized topic in this very big world I've created, and this long journey I've plotted out for my main character, Sola, a young girl who wants to learn how to harness this life energy called the Kua and join the order. And quite frankly, make a big name for herself. She wants to be bigger than she is. She wants to be more important than she feels she is. She's got a chip on her shoulder and she wants to prove herself. And in thinking of like a what I wanted to do for my story was I wanted to tell like a slice of life story, like what's a day to day experience or a day to day lesson. So small scale. I was thinking about the theme, going back to the theme of like martial arts teaching you gentleness and teaching you kindness. So I actually have two inspirations. One is um, some wisdom I got from my karate sensei, this older Japanese gentleman. And one of the things he was saying is that, just to be clear, our martial art, being very traditional, is not focused on street fighting, right? The way other disciplines might be. It's not something you're going to use in a fight. And so, with that said, our sensei, some advice, he said, well, if anyone ever stops you and asks for your wallet, you have to do two things, two very important things. First of all, you take your wallet out and give it to them. Second of all, you run. I just love that idea of, and truly, that's taught me the spirit of martial arts is to do the least harm, right? When you're in a situation, you don't do the most you can do. You try to do the least you can do, and make sure everyone walks away and is safe. So I was really inspired by that. Another inspiration, for those of you who are fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender, I just love the episode Tales from Ba Sing Se, and in particular, Iroh's story. For those who may or may not know, it's a short vignette about one of the most beloved characters in the whole series. He's an older guy. He is a master firebender, and a former general, former leader of his nation. And it just follows him around in his day. And this guy with such massive power, such long life of experience, and martial victories, and he spends his day helping people, just being just kind and gentle. For those who haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil it. The ending is, to put it mildly. I mean, it's emotionally stirring in a beautiful way when you realize why he's doing this. But I was really inspired by that idea of, because it doesn't get told in a lot of martial arts stories, about using your martial arts abilities for kindness. So, okay, I know this is getting a little long, but the kicker to it is, when I put that all together, the story I wanted to tell was this idea of not only using your martial arts ability for kindness, but maybe, if the martial arts is powered by energy, right? The energy that you can summon from life around you, maybe the most powerful kind of energy you can summon, it doesn't come from wanting to be strong or be powerful or be a big shot or try to prove yourself or dominate other people, but it comes from being as kind as you can be to other people. So that became the heart of the story I wanted to tell.
I
So in a
love that.
nutshell, what the story is about is, again, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Well, I didn't stop it.
No, you can keep going. I'm just saying I love that. That's awesome. Please keep going.
Okay, well, I would just say that the theme of the story is, young Sola, this young student who really dedicated to learning this, really willing to put in the work, is frustrated. He's at a stumbling point because he just can't energy her peers, right? She just can't make kind of overwhelming, overpowered energy she wants. And so her teacher and mentor takes her on a walk and tells her a story from his own experience, like he was like that too, and how he learned this lesson that we're talking about how sometimes the most strongest, purest energy that you can draw from within you, it comes from kindness rather than self-importance or dominance. That's it.
That's such an important lesson to learn too in life in general. Like I love that. And I've read, obviously I've gotten the benefit of being able to actually read your story. And it's really good. Like I love everything you've done with it. So I'm excited for this to get out into the world further.
You. Well, and I'm excited too. It's funny because when I first came across this idea, it didn't come fully formed like out of my head, right? Like Athena springing from Zeus's forehead. Honestly, what really motivated it, other than these inspirations, was I just wanted to tell something that hadn't been told before. And so this idea of generating, becoming a super badass at generating this supernatural force, but coming from kindness and gentleness, like that was, I was like, okay, that's new. But when I finished the story, looking back on it, the reason it resonated, like I said before, about how there's kind of an inadvertent discovery about what's really important to me. Because, like, yeah, I do believe in being kind. I do believe in this idea of finding a place that where you belong, and then once you're in that position, extending that to people so that they feel like they belong. Like, there's, uh, you know, there's never enough. There can never be enough kindness in the world. I mean, now more than ever. And so, like, just having stumbled into this, and the reason I mentioned this, Jeff, is because I would not have discovered this had I not set out to tell the story, which is now making me want to tell more stories.
Well, that kind of leads naturally into what I was going to ask you. You've already kind of alluded to you want to keep telling more stories in this world. So, what's next?
Jeff, I'm sorry, I have trouble hearing you. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you okay. Am I as my can you hear me okay? I'm wondering.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you able to hear me at all?
I lost you for a bit. I'm sorry. Would you mind repeating the question?
Oh, no worries. So I was like you kind of naturally led towards what I was already getting ready to ask, which is you kind of alluded to wanting to tell more stories in this universe. So what's next?
Well, so sticking with the idea of bringing more short stories to life, I got a couple of I pulled a couple of ideas from my notes, and I've shared them with critique group, and gotten the thumbs up on a couple that ideas that really resonated with folks, and so that's what I'm working on next. So um, I'm working on another short story. This one is also very similar. It's again about the nature of this energy, the Kua, and the unexpected waves. Um, Sola again will learn how to better at using it, and now in this case, shaping it into something. And I also have other stories because she's got it'll be the first time where I introduce her good friends, her fellow classmates, and I have stories planned for each of them because each of them has this particular affinity um, with this life energy and their own different um, um, strengths in how they use it and how they channel it and how it works through them that I'd love to tell. And all of these short stories are what I hope will be great contributions for a future anthology, whether it's an official Kids Comics one or the low key idea we're working on.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I know I've seen some of the pitches for the next stories, and yeah, I want more. I want to see the world grow and be expanded upon. So I'm excited for it. So one thing we kind of haven't really talked about here, but
Well,
I know because I
getting the
oh go ahead.
no, I was just going to say it's really kind of you, and it's what it helps overcome the perfectionist voice that tells me it's never good enough to get out.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I wanted to ask you next, we haven't really talked about it, but I know from seeing you taking meetings from in your suit and tie during the day, having to balance things like so. Bert and I both have offices. I'm in Florida, but I'm connected to an office that's in DC, and Bert is also connected to an office in DC area. And you've been hit pretty hard by the change in having to be in 5 days a week. How do you balance that? How do you balance like the Substack and the creating and all of it?
Uh, well, really good question, and thank you for asking. So by way of background, yeah, I work for the federal government in Washington, D.C. I work for the Treasury Department. I've been there for, geez, over 10 years now, and it's a great place. I love the mission. I love the people I work with. Like I said, in the context of comics, I mean, what the opportunity to serve has just been such a powerful and fulfilling, kind of, career direction for me. And yeah, until last month, I've been lucky to have been able to work remotely ever since the pandemic started. And I think one of the things I really enjoyed most about working remotely is how much time it gave me to do stuff that mattered to me outside the office. And so, for example, my exploration as a creator really took off. Having the time um, I didn't have to spend commuting or even putting on a suit. And of course, that's all changed. So, um, well, I think that how I'm ultimately going to wind up, the ultimate balance between writing and then doing this work, I mean, still to be determined. Right now, I feel like I am burning three candles at both ends. So there's the work, and so that means, getting up, putting on a suit and tie, going to the office, doing all the work I do. It also means creating the stories, showing up for critique groups, continuing to do the work we're doing for the anthology and beyond. But I also mentioned martial arts, and during the pandemic, another thing I started doing with my free time was, I crossed over from being a student to a teacher. So I started a club, a small martial arts club out of a local community center, and it's been going for a couple of years now. And I'm crazy. I have students who are brown belts, and they're on the edge of becoming black belts pretty soon. I mean, it's like the circle of life. It's incredible. And so the way I'm handling all that now is that I am doing all of it. I haven't changed anything. It required some pretty major changes in my routine. Meaning, if I'm going to get it all in, I gotta show up. I gotta block out the time to show up in my office and take care of that part. That means I'm just getting up that much earlier, consistently. I can knock out whatever creative stuff I can during the day in early enough to the office so that I can leave early enough to take care of my teaching responsibilities in the evening. And so hopefully I don't have to do that every weekday, but it's a lot. And so right now I'm able to do all that at the expense of my sleeping because I'm not naturally a morning person. I've been good at getting up when I need to. What I want to get better at is going to bed early enough to make a nice sleep.
Yes, I can very much identify with that struggle. It's really impressive, I've got to say. You don't see many three-ended candles to burn.
You sorry, I was going to say you and Ashley have. I don't know how you guys do it because you've got young kids and health challenges and homeschooling. I mean, that's 3 or 4 jobs right there too. You guys, I want to interview you and ask you how you do it.
Uh, it's a team effort. I mean, it's 100% a team effort, and there is definitely for us a side to it of just having to come to reality and be like, okay, there's some things that just can't get done as fast as we'd like. A lot of times, it's the goal is to get some creative time on any given day. And sometimes for me, like that's like just we're just sitting and watching TV. I don't have, much of a brain for much else, but I can sit and watch TV and I can draw. You know, I may not be in a great place to do like pencils, for example, because there's a lot of decisions there and there's a lot of like detail work. So I can't do that. That has to happen at certain times. But it's the admission that like okay, some things are gonna have to slow down because there's just no way to fit it in with the things that have to happen regularly. That's for us, and things like stream. Uh, this stream started because one like the social media grind is really hard, and it's like well. I've been watching Twitch for like a decade and I love the format. And what if I just tried it out? And what if that was how we got out in the world? What if that how we shared ourselves and our work? And it evolved into a block of time that every week I have that's always dedicated to art. And that has been really helpful. And even when there's times where I can be working other times of the week, I can dedicate like stream is for this piece or this line of things that I'm doing. And then I can work on other things in non-stream time. and so it kind of created these like threads of work to allow me to kind of get multiple things done better. So it's been a learning battle, but we're doing the best we can.
Yeah. Well, I love hearing that. There's so many good elements about that. I mean, it takes a lot of patience and kindness with yourself. I mean, and then just I guess that open, free spirit of yours to find different avenues to stay creative. I mean, it's just that exploration. And I have to thank you too, because, before you suggested doing the Twitch, like I had no exposure to this. Like I got a Twitch account because, I wanted to join your live stream with Sarah. And yeah, now it's just like it's so exciting the possibilities, like what you're saying, like the way you can use it to block out time, but also build community. And like I said before, I mean, Jeff, you're such a great interviewer. Like you could turn this into a podcast if every creator would come.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Um, yeah, I think Twitch has a lot to it. Honestly, the community, like if you go to any Twitch channel, that's kind of built up a little bit, um, they're all these little communities. It's almost like Cheers, right? Like it's the corner bar where there's like this group of people and everybody knows each other and kind of like has their roles that they play, and they support each other while watching. Kind of you've got the streamer who's doing their thing and they're interacting, but you've also got the community that's interacting with each other and the streamer, and it becomes this like really almost every community that I've seen or really stuck with, it becomes its own little affirmative pocket, and it's a really compelling environment. It reminded me at first, because I watched a lot of just video game streams, of playing games with friends, like sitting around the sofa and one person is playing and everyone's sitting around just talking. And then when I started doing like watching and doing art streams, it suddenly turned into like an art studio, because a lot of the people that come into my stream are artists and they're working while they're talking with me and I'm working, and it becomes this really relaxed art studio vibe, and it's pretty great.
So cool.
But yeah. By the way, you've gotten the interview mic pried out of my hands and into yours, and it's you're doing quite a good job as well.
Oh, I mean, I feel, again, many reasons I feel blessed to be part of this community. There's so many interesting folks and so many interesting stories to share. I learned stuff about you I didn't even realize, so I'm super curious, Jeff.
But we should do this again. I definitely think there's so much more that we could be talking about. I definitely think the martial arts comics stream with Patrick would be very fun as well. So I see we're coming
Yeah.
to the 5 o'clock hour, and I'm gonna have to wrap up soon, and we've got some evening commitments for the family here. But Bert, it has been a blast talking with you. This is fun. I know we. So Bert, this is his first time on stream, everyone. But he is definitely no stranger to our computer monitors here in the household. We have weekly critique group meetings with Bert and our other critique friends, and we also see each other in various Kids Comics Unite and studio events. And of course, there's our weekly publishing committee as well, which we didn't even really talk about the experience of publishing committee yet, which that is like the whole how the sausage is made thing. But that's been such an amazing experience, and it's been a lot of work, but I think it's been good times through it all. Yeah, a few contentious moments when people who really want to make something good but have different ideas about how to do that come together. um, but I guess I'm just kind of like monologuing here. um, did you have anything you wanted to share about like what's it been like for you working on publishing committee?
I would just echo what you said. It's been really illuminating. I mean, I think when you call this sausage making factory, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's I really feel like know it's getting that close a glimpse of how it's made. You learn so much. It's like the ultimate example of you learn by doing. Like, what better way to put out a book that's going to be so big? It's like 200 something pages with so many people, other than to get into the publishing committee. It's funny because, I was talking to another creator, and, they weren't on the publishing committee, but they're kind of saying how um, when the call for volunteers came out, like, hey, here's the different committees, who wants to be on what? Kind of pointing out that it seemed like almost everyone wanted to be on either the editorial committee, like actually reviewing the content, or the design committee, like doing the spec for the book itself, because those are the natural environments for a lot of creators. And it's funny because, 100%, I saw that. For me, oh, there's no question. I want to be in publishing. Wanted to be able to see from beginning to end, like how the whole thing comes together. And you're right, it's been an experience. A lot of laughs, a lot of moments, a lot of lessons learned. And yeah, I just can't wait to do it all over again.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one more question about PubCom. Nothing too direct or nothing too dangerous. Just I remember early on you came in as a self described process geek. Like,
Boy,
how did you get into that, or how is that always been?
oh, yeah, I'm a latecomer to being a process nerd. Honestly, it came from it came from working in Treasury. I know we're running short on time, so I'll just say real briefly. So I have had the privilege to wear a number of hats, taken on a number of different roles in my agency and the agency I worked at beforehand. So it really gave me an appreciation to the things that need to get done. And a lot of those things are things that, number one, people don't naturally realize need to get done. Number two, either can't or really don't care or don't want to go anywhere near it, but they're important. And so, what you have to do, what I had to learn to do in order to make it go as smoothly as possible, not just for not just for me, just as much as everyone else, is you have to learn to put it into a process that people can understand and accept, and then and it's predictable, so that it's like you when you go get your checkup, you may not want to get blood drawn, but if you know how it's going to go and it's going to go this that little pinch, little ouch, and you're done, you can get people to accept a lot of things that are good for the whole, even if it's not something people would volunteer to do. And so that's just a long way of saying, like, yeah, like I feel like that's the kind of perspective you can bring to any group effort.
That's good. I like the idea of publishing committee being in an analogy with getting your blood drawn. Um, I know that wasn't exactly what you said, and I'm not quoting you on that, but like my brain immediately went there, and I thought it was kind of funny. Um,
I've only had moments like that. No, no, no lie.
yeah, it's been a journey, and I think it's really exciting now to see we're in the phase where not only have we launched the Kickstarter, the book is funded. We're not done yet. We still actually have to get the thing made, and we do have a fulfillment service, so that'll be helpful for getting books out to backers. But yeah, we're almost there, and there's something very fulfilling about that. Um, so I think that naturally is a good full circle moment for the chat here. Before we go, would you like to tell everybody where they can find you, social media, internet, and any parting words?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, I think I'm most active on Substack. So I have a nice little column account going there. So please look me up there. You can see on the rotator how to reach me. I also post on Blue Sky. A little bit of a presence on Instagram. That's mainly it. I also have a website. It's not the most active. It's pretty bare bones. But again, that's one of the things I'm trying to teach myself to do to market myself.
Very cool. Um, yeah, and if there's unless there's anything else you'd like to say, I can go ahead and wrap us up.
So this was so much fun. Wow, it's so energizing. It's just really energizing just being able to chat and go deep on a deep dive on topics that we're just really passionate about. It's just so much fun.
Yeah, I've had a blast too. Thank you for coming on. Likewise, I've learned things about you that I didn't know, and I think that's the most fun part is where things kind of just diverge into these areas. Like, whoa, I didn't realize that. Um, so thank you everyone for joining. If you were here in the chat, we appreciate your time here. If you were here lurking, we're always a lurk positive environment, never going to call you out. If you're watching the videos on demand here on Twitch or on YouTube, feel free to leave a like or a follow or a subscribe or whatever is appropriate on that platform. Maybe a comment if you have any questions or if you liked what you saw. I will be back. My usual stream days are Thursdays. This is a very, very special, unique time for me, being here on Saturday. But I'll be back on Thursday. But actually, I'm going to be doing another different time stream on Thursday, 3:30, with Cesar Lador, joining us all the way from France. So that'll be a new first for the stream, bringing in someone internationally. So I'm pretty excited about that. That's going to be good times. He's going to be talking about his experience working over on the marketing side, as well as his comic for the book, which is one of the sample pages on the Kickstarter, which you should check out. And the link is right there in the chat. I've pinned it. If you're not here, you can just go to Kickstarter and look for "Let's Go Kids Comics Anthology." But I'll probably also then go live at 10 p.m., my usual stream time on Thursday, just for a more standard art stream, as I work on. I got a couple things I'm thinking of that we might do there. But at any rate, Kids Unites, first anthology, let's go. It's out there on Kickstarter. It is funded. We appreciate those of you who have backed us. And if you are interested and are willing to back and you haven't yet, please head on over and do so. Bert, it's been great. I have once again forgotten, as I do every single stream, to load my stream ending graphic. So I'm just going to keep talking nonstop while I search for that and load it. I will learn one of these days to do to actually preload it. But yeah, there we
You've done
go.
a great job. Don't worry.
Thanks. It's been a blast. We should do this again. I'll make sure to announce if we can line things up to bring Bert back on stream. I will make sure to announce that. And thank you, everyone. I will see you next time. Bye.